Since BlizzCon 2018, it seems that a lot of people came to realize a sad truth surrounding one of the most beloved companies in the gaming world, Blizzard Entertainment. Hate to say it myself, but the signs of Blizzard losing its way were present much earlier than 2018, and in the next 30 to 40 minutes we will go through a topic I know and researched with the sole purpose to maybe help them get back to where they once were. So sit back, grab a drink and a snack as we go a bit back in time to figure out where it all started. My honest belief is that what makes great companies and great products are great people, and this is what we will be focusing on. The people that helped build Blizzard's wonderful universes and the inside company culture, adding on top how much of them are still around. These are the people that get categorized in the corporate world as product people. The ones that truly put their heart and creativity into everything they do to create the best product possible. And those products are so good that they become monopolist giants. But that doesn't happen just by being a great product. You need sales and marketing people to push that product as far as possible, and this is why in the corporate world the product people tend to be forgotten as the sales and marketing guys end up being promoted to running these companies because they're always attributed with the growth and expansions of these corporations. And what happens then? I'll let good old 1994 Steve Jobs explain it.
John came from PepsiCo, and they at most would change their product, once every 10 years. I mean, to them, a new product was like a new size bottle, right? So if you were a product person, you couldn't change the course of that company very much. So who influenced the success of PepsiCo? The sales and marketing people. Therefore, they were the ones that got promoted, and therefore they were the ones that ran the company. Well, for PepsiCo, that might have been okay, but it turns out the same thing can happen in technology companies that get monopolies, like, IBM and Xerox. If you were a product person at IBM or Xerox, so you make a better copy or a better computer. So what? When you have a monopoly market share, the company's not any more successful. So the people that can make the company more successful are sales and marketing people, and they end up running the companies. And the product people get driven out of the decision-making forums. And the companies forget what it means to make great products. Sort of the product sensibility and the product genius that brought them to that monopolistic position gets rotted out by people running these companies who have no conception of a good product versus a bad product. They have no conception of the craftsmanship that's required to take a good idea and turn it into a good product. And they really have no feeling in their hearts, usually, about wanting to really help the customers.
Kind of rings truth to what's happened with Blizzard in the last couple of years, right? Oh, by the way, for this documentary I have researched extensively past interviews, news coverage, wikis, old forum posts, old game magazines I have, plus me being a huge Blizzard fanboy, eating up basically every news, documentary and game they put out since Warcraft 2. There, credibility, check. Let's go! First and most obvious one is none other than the founding father of the Diablo franchise, Mr. David Brevik. If you're not aware, Diablo is basically his brainchild back from 1994. He was the CEO of Condor Games back then, and after they met up with Blizzard at CES 1994, they kind of saw a lot of similarities between the company's cultures and hunger for creating awesome PC games. That on top of the fact that, without knowing, both companies worked on the same game, Justice League Task Force, Condor for the Sega Genesis and Blizzard for the SNES, and both versions of the game were oddly similar.
So we got a contract to do the Justice League Task Force game. And this was a Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Street Fighter clone. So we show up at CES, this is before E3 existed. We show up and we have our game on display, and we look over and wait, there's another version of the product for Super Nintendo. I'm like, wait, what? What? We didn't know that there was another developer working on the exact same game as us the two had never talked. The publisher never talked about there was another contract. There was no, like, what the heck is going on? This is really weird or whatever. And the games were strangely similar. I'm like, whoa, this is really weird. So we got to know these guys, and their name was Silicon and Synapse, and so we got to talking at the show, and they said, oh yeah, well, you know, we're Silicon and Synapse right now, and kind of under the radar here, we're selling the company, and we're going to change our name, and we're going to make a PC game. And I said, oh, that sounds awesome. That's what we want to do. My dream. I have a dream to make a PC game. You know, that's anyway. So we got to talking to Silicon and Synapse, and they're, oh, we're making this game or whatever, and we're going to change our name, and we're going to be called Blizzard Entertainment.
They were eventually bought by Blizzard and then became Blizzard North, and went on to create Diablo 1, Diablo 2, and the expansion Lord of Destruction. They also kicked off the original development for Diablo 3 with Brevik as the lead, but because of a lot of differences and possibly tensions between them and the original Blizzard team, they decided to leave the company in 2003, taking with them a huge portion of the talent pool that was responsible for the most beloved Diablo games to date. Brevik had always wanted the Diablo game to be dark gothic, focused on replayability but in a true RPG style, have players work on their skills and talent trees, and make the gear a tough journey, and basically everything that Path of Exile does today. That was always David's vision. Apparently the original team at Blizzard didn't want that anymore, so he left. There's no denying on the impact David had on Blizzard's image in the 90s, being one of the most beloved gaming companies putting out excellent and polished games. I mean, hell, his creation is still being played 24 years, now 25 years after it all began. And back then not a lot of people knew about him, everything was accredited to Blizzard, but I digress. He's no longer with the company, and then the 2012 Diablo 3 fiasco happened. Yikes. Now for the next guy, I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for bringing him up, but please listen till the end because you'll understand why he was so important to Blizzard and more specifically for World of Warcraft. The one famous for the line "Nerf him to the ground," Mr. Ghostcrawler aka Greg Street.
My name is Greg. I'm one of the lead designers of World of Warcraft. I'm a Libra. I like long walks on the beach, drinking gin, and nerfing paladins. I'm kidding, I love all you guys.
He left the company in 2013 to later join Riot Games, but prior to that he joined Blizzard back in February of 2008 as a lead system designer for World of Warcraft. Back then that was quite an important role as his team handled a lot of what were under talents, skills, overall class changes, balancing and new features coming along. He kept the lead system designer position through Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria and was basically the face of World of Warcraft until he left Blizzard. But he gave birth to an unprecedented and quite blunt method of keeping close with the community. Of course, sometimes he talks smack to people, but never crossing that line. Other times his arguments were just plain silly. A lot of people didn't always agree with him, but almost daily he tweeted about stuff that's happening with the game and became one of the most active devs on the forums. Usually, communicating with players is covered by community managers. Thus, you can imagine how big this was, having an actual big boss from inside to keep you up to date and responding to feedback while discussing with players different issues with the game. I don't think we ever had something like that in WoW since him, and if you compare the communication we had during Battle for Azeroth Alpha, almost non-existent, I think you can understand why he was so valuable to the Blizzard fam. He truly believed in a continuous and open dialogue with the community, thing he does till this day. Even though he works for Riot Games, he still gets asked opinions on WoW and he answers most of the time. Now this next guy, when he left, oh man, that was a huge deal back then. Personally, I couldn't believe it because he was such a solid block for Blizzard games, and indeed, what a loss, man. I'm talking about Rob Pardo. He joined the company in 1997 during StarCraft's development and quickly became a lead designer for Brood War while working simultaneously on Diablo 1 and 2, and then became a spearhead for Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne expansion. He also acted as lead design for Vanilla WoW and the Burning Crusade expansion, then becoming chief creative officer for Blizzard. You know, the social aspect of Vanilla WoW a lot of people crave for, or the constant engagement and wonder it used to have? Well, Pardo was a big advocate for that.
We're to shine the spotlight onto World of Warcraft because it's really a massive game. It's a massive world, and there's all kinds of different activities that you can do within the game. But the area that I thought was the most interesting, at least for all of you in this audience, is the level of engagement that you get out of a game like World of Warcraft, because we're able to do something I think most entertainment medium can't do, which is keep people involved in the game for hours a day and hours a week for many, many years. And you just don't really have that opportunity with a lot of other types of entertainment. And then the other, I think, really interesting thing about World of Warcraft is that it's a very social game. It's what's called a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. So we have people across the world that are playing together and really building real friendships and doing team-based activities, and this becomes really like their hobby. You know, this becomes the thing that they do instead of TV or instead of playing golf. Every night they'll go home and play the game with their existing friends and making new friends.
So basically, his vision and guidance was decisive for all of the Blizzard games we hold so dearly to our hearts. WoW was just an example. Hell, in 2006, Time magazine named Pardo one of the 100 most influential people in the world. He was truly a gameplay-first type of dev, and if I'm not mistaken, he proposed this gameplay-first mantra to be one of the core values for Blizzard back in 97 or 98. Now you understand why it was a bit shocking for me that he decided to leave Blizzard in 2014, and personally I think his departure really shifted the sands for Blizzard in the years to come. Now for the remaining Diablo 3 fans out there, I'm sure the next guy who left Blizzard in 2016 isn't an unfamiliar face or name. Talking about none other than Josh Mosqueira, the dude that joined Blizzard in 2011 to be in charge of the console versions of Diablo 3. And what a hell of a job he did there. I mean, I played Diablo 3 on my Xbox One and it was amazing, still play it to this day. And it's especially awesome when playing it with some other friends on the same couch. Really great job he did there. Later becoming basically Diablo 3's savior as he went on and took the role of game director in June 2013. We all know the Diablo 3 fiasco, and even to this day a lot of people will argue that the game is distances apart from Diablo 2, but you have to take into consideration all of the good things Mosqueira and his team brought to the game with the Reaper of Souls expansion. This guy had the balls to face up all the big execs at Blizzard and tell them to their face that the infamous auction house has to go. His case convinced them, alongside of course great multiple features to be added to the game, concluding in a much better version of Diablo 3.
So I remember a couple of weeks after the console version shipped, we had our monthly D3 strategy meeting with Mike Moorheim and essentially all the leadership at Blizzard. And the topic that day was, because of Hearthstone coming out, because of Heroes of the Storm coming out, we needed to do some changes to the way the back-end system of cashing out worked. So there was talk about, so what to do with the auction house and how to make these changes. And the meeting had gone on for about 20 minutes. There was a lot of business talk, a lot of legal talk, so I was off thinking about, how to slay demons and how to be an epic hero and doodling. And at that point, Mike Morhaime notices that I haven't said anything and says, well, Josh, you're awfully quiet. What do you think we should do? I'm like, busted. What are we talking about? The auction house. No, I'm kidding. And so I thought to myself, okay, I could say what I think is a safe answer, right? We can sort of say like, okay, maybe make small changes. We had a bunch of proposals in terms of how to try to limit the impact of the auction house by making items less tradable and all these things. We had all these really complex systems. And we sort of were okay with those compromises. But then I sort of said, you know what? I should really speak what I think is the right thing to do. So I said, Mike, I think what we need to do is we need to shut down both the real money and the gold auction house. I mean, people played Diablo to slay all the things. Thank you, guys.
As recently leaked, he was also in charge of the next iteration for a major Diablo release, which he had envisioned as a cross between the old Diablo 2 and Dark Souls, which personally I thought would be amazing. Sadly, he left Blizzard in 2016 to join Pardo in creating an independent studio called Bonfire, but that is for another video. There are not a lot of people at Blizzard who you can point out and say, hey, this dude saved this game, and I don't feel they have stand-up guys anymore like Mosqueira to have enough cojones to take risks like he did. Needless to say, huge loss once again. Okay, now we're getting into the last two people and whom I personally think had the biggest impact so far out of everybody on the list. Starting it off with Chris Metzen. Oh man, this dude deserves an hour-long video on his own on all of the things he did. He left the company in 2016, but boy was he an influence at Blizzard since he started back in 1994. In that time, the studio was named Chaos Studios after being changed from Silicon and Synapse, so he's quite old school. You know when you open up your map in WoW and look at Azeroth and the continents, cities, names and all of that? Yeah, he basically created all of that from scratch and kept on smoothing it out since 1995's Warcraft 2 Tides of Vengeance.
Around the time that we started jamming Warcraft 2, I remember feeling very intensely that like, wouldn't it be fun to blow this thing out, really, to have multiple kingdoms and continents and, you know, more races involved, each with their own kind of distinct flavor and history. Most of its ideas were just this kind of amalgamation of the different designers and people working on it at the time. It was pretty classic stuff, pretty classic fantasy stuff. The idea of creating kind of these interlocked ideas or cultures really allowed these guys to have a springboard into the art design process.
He was the one to strongly maintain the idea that orcs can be heroes too and should have an individual story and purpose, unlike all fantasy books, movies or games at the time where orcs were just mindless brutes. You can thank him for the Horde being a thing. Oh, and did you know that Diablo 1 and 2 didn't really have a story? They finished the games, I mean all the acts, and then Metz, together with Bill Roper and the newly created cinematics team, linked every act to one another and created all the character and plots, essentially giving birth to the original Diablo lore and universe. You can also thank him for the amazing stories in StarCraft, StarCraft Brood War, Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne. That on top of him being the voice of the Battlecruiser,
operational,
the Marine,
jacked up and good to go.
Thrall,
You brought the war, Chief. I'll bring the war.
Varian,
Stand together, trust each other, and our enemy will break.
Ragnaros,
By fire be purged.
and many others. It's not fair to limit all of his contributions to Blizzard games, but for time constraints, I think we can all agree he was the heart and soul of most of the Blizzard games. Just because his creations in story and characters had exactly that. I mean, just think of the Warcraft 3 Arthas story, man. I was 100% legitimately sad when I found out that he's leaving Blizzard, but also happy in a way because he did it to spend more time with his family and especially his newborn son, and also take care of his health issues. Nonetheless, a big loss for Blizzard, no doubt. Last one to leave and coming to nobody's surprise by now is the gentle face we saw at almost every BlizzCon's opening ceremony, the guiding light for Blizzard, Mike Morhaime. He founded the company back in 1991 together with Alan Anham and Frank Pierce.
He got it in his head that I should quit my job at Western Digital and go into business with him making games.
Much to the chagrin of his parents, his father in particular thought it was crazy to leave a good job for this crazy startup with a 22-year-old kid, but I think his dad knows he made the right decision now.
I borrowed $15,000 from my grandmother $10,000 went into the company, $5,000 went into my bank account, and that's pretty much what I lived off of for the next 2 years.
When it comes to Mike's input on the Blizzard games, you'll very often see him in the credits as a programmer, but an iconic one nonetheless, as he helped program StarCraft and Brood War, Warcraft and Warcraft 2, and he also helped on the creation of Battle.net, and his cell editor was the foundation of the future Warcraft and StarCraft map editors, who later gave birth to a huge modding community and created new game genres, such as the MOBA.
We used a program called CED that Mike Moorheim had written for this purpose to lay things out.
CED, the cell editor. This was my first project at Blizzard. It was a C++ project written completely in Zortex C++, and learned how to program in C++. It
was also the first forerunner for the map editor that would later become part of StarCraft and Warcraft and our games moving forward.
But him being directly involved in games is one thing. The main contribution coming from Morhaime was on his role of president and CEO of the company, placing a huge value on excellent games, having his employees happy, and the communities around Blizzard games be happy. In a recent Kotaku article, anonymous employees described him as the anti-CEO, being widely beloved at the company because, at least at a surface level, he didn't come across as being focused on profitability, but rather on good games and keeping everyone happy.
Mike and I tried to, shelter everybody from anything other than making the games.
We found out that you could actually get interest-free advances on your Discovery card by going to the supermarket and getting cash back.
They would go and they would cash in their credit cards at the local market and then put the money in the bank account so that they could still make payroll.
And although we never missed the payroll, it's really a miracle that we never missed the payroll because we were always a week away from being unable to make payroll.
And some people knew about this and some people didn't. But those of us that did, we know the kind of people these men are, and we knew then that we would work for these people forever.
His departure from Blizzard in October last year really left a sour taste in my mouth, but at least he's still acting as an advisor for the new exec team. Whether that team will take on board his advices or not, one can only wish. Contrary to what may have been streamlined until now, this video is made just to shed some light on one facet of the original downfall of the company and potentially, as naive as this sounds, remind Blizzard on the importance of key people or so-called product people within their ranks. Some people tend to agree that keeping around old farts for too long within a big franchise isn't great. You need to change the air, bring in some new blood within that franchise to give it a fresh spin or a new look or something like that. Now, I can agree with that to some extent, but retain the key people who have the soul, the vision, the strategy, who made the foundation for that franchise to have, different iterations upon it. Just think about Ed Boon and the Mortal Kombat franchise. Ed Boon is the designer and programmer for Mortal Kombat since 1991. He is 54 years old and still delivers great games on the Mortal Kombat franchises every time a new Mortal Kombat title is out. And this is just one example, but this topic will be greatly detailed in a future documentary. Even though Alan Atham was the one who confirmed that a lot of good devs are moving to mobile, he's still one of the founding fathers of Blizzard and one who is often quoted as being an advocate for gameplay first. Mark Kern recently said in an interview that Atham, during meetings, was always the one to say, "Don't be too greedy, guys, don't sacrifice the game for profitability." This when reaching topics like business plans and pricing and stuff.
But it was gamers first. And then what's the smart decision? And we also, Alan Adham used to say, don't be too greedy. Don't sacrifice, too much on the game side for the sake of profitability. Alan says this. Alan's still there at the company. So that gives me a lot of hope, right? Because he founded the company along with Mike and Frank, and he's there right now. So that is like a window of hope right there.
And let's not forget that there are still many key people who were there at the beginning of Blizzard's exceptional early gems, such as Frank Pierce, who practically co-founded Blizzard together with Mike and Adham and still acts as Chief Development Officer. Samwise Didier is also still there acting as senior art director, him basically being the one who gave birth to the majority of the Blizzard art style throughout the years. And of course, let's not forget about Jeff Kaplan and Alex Afrasiabi, who were both key people in the success for vanilla World of Warcraft. Kaplan, as you know, is leading the Overwatch team, who admittedly isn't going through the most positive phase either, but you cannot doubt the value, impact, and success Overwatch had since its launch, with Kaplan being a regular on Talking with the Community. Afrasiabi is creative director for World of Warcraft, and to some extent, he kinda took over Metz's involvements in the game. A lot of his influence is most felt in Legion, which I thought was one of WoW's greatest expansions to date. Don't know how much he got his sayings in BFA, but even if some storylines, quests, and plots are amazing, they're still overshadowed by the many problems this expansion had. Needless to say, these are just a few examples of the people that are still at Blizzard and honestly give me a light of hope of the future. I want to thank you for watching the video until the end, and hopefully it sheds some light on what happened to Blizzard over the years. I take no shame in admitting that this took a lot of work and research to finalize, and if you enjoy documentaries like this, please consider backing the project up by becoming a Patreon. On top of receiving some awesome perks such as custom wallpapers with your WoW character, you will appear on the list of the founding fathers of these documentaries and help maintain their production on a monthly basis. Thank you once again and have a great day.